Good morning, everybody. This is Gladys Aguai, founder of Ignite Within. Welcome to the Tuesday morning Sip and Talk. Excited to be with you again today. Last week I missed because I was in a conference and couldn't do it, but I'm here today. And just appreciate everybody's support and the comments that I'm getting about what we're doing and the messages that we're delivering to you. Again, I said I'm the founder of Ignite Within, and I help professionals who are disengaged with what they're doing, who really hate what they're doing, to get clarity of purpose and objective, to set that accelerated and sustainable growth plan to get the outcomes that you want, not the outcomes that everybody else wants, but the outcomes that you want. And just so excited to have my guest with me, Lisa Bennett. Lisa is a business and life strategist, and I've known Lisa for a couple of years now. And we're going to be talking about how to seek, build, and live an abundant life. And you will find our conversation going in, a couple of different directions, but it all falls right back into living your abundant life. And again, not what somebody else says should be your abundant life, but living your abundant life. And so just really excited for Lisa. She is a wonderful human being and just love her dearly. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Miss. I call Gladys Miss G. Thank you, Miss G. I appreciate the invitation. When we get together, I like to run my mouth because I just really appreciate all that you bring to my life. You have served as a mentor and a big sister over the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah,
it's time has flown, but I appreciate the invitation as well.
Yeah, so I'm just really excited. I wanted to have her wife to join us, Rasheida, who I also love dearly. She's just the best human being in the whole wide world. She was there a minute ago around in that area, but she's exited out of the picture. You better be watching, Miss Rasheida. You better be watching this, right? But love their relationship, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Just a lot of different things. But again, welcome, Lisa. I really appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you. No problem at all.
Yeah, so, let's just kind of get into how to seek, build, and live an abundant life. Are you seeing people who are not doing that, and what does that look like?
Well, obviously, I said the obvious question is yes. What happens is in life, we live what we like to, one of my mentors, he was actually Rasheida's godfather. He always says this, here's this phrase that we like to romanticize life. We try to romanticize life and believe that there are more than two emotions, but they're really not, right? There is you're either living your life out of fear or you're living your life out of love.
Absolutely.
And when we get in the middle part, the gray area, and start to negotiate things is when we start to have problems. But most of us live, if you look at that as a spectrum, and one on the right, one on the left, most of us live in the middle, and most of the time over to the fear part. We're afraid of all of the consequences of life as opposed to embracing that, let's say if you're a Christian, as opposed to embracing that what God has planned for you and ordained for you is going to happen, and that everything that happens as part of that process is just a part of the journey, but it's not the end destination. But we're so fearful of what we think that's going to look like that we refuse to even walk in a direction of living out of love and just going boldly into life. So yeah, I see it all the time. And one of the things that has called me, as you well know, to exit my position with a high-powered consulting firm was because I've always had this yearn to be a better person myself, but to help people. I call them the isms. We have this feminism and womanism and we got all these boxes that we segment people into. And when we're talking to folks and when we're interacting, we only want to interact with one of the boxes as opposed to them as a full person. And I think that part of that, and my job and what I believe my calling is to help people sort of find that alignment between those boxes and not let people just talk to you about, It's like having a single issue candidate for president, if you will. You know, if you vote on a single issue, you're going to be in trouble. It's an 80-20 rule, and that pretty much applies across the board to how you sum up the presidency, how you sum up your life. And if you allow people to silo you, and an example, again, you know, so many things happening in the world right now. We can use as examples, but in this country right now, we're having these racial problems. If you only talk to me based on me being African American or what you think, because you didn't ask me if I was African American,
right?
by this appearance, and that's all, you're forgetting all of these other things about me.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. I say that we are not these silo people like you talked about, and we look at ourselves in a silo, but we are this holistic, integrated,
right.
complicated human being. And when you talk about we live too much on the side of fear, it's fear of, are we going to be able to achieve what we say we set out to do? Can we really do this? But also the fear of what other people think. What will other
Are saying
people
about it.
say about
Yeah.
what it is that we are wanting to do? And, you know, I think that's what's so important. And I think that's a difficult thing in this environment, not as difficult as it used to be. But I talked to you all and told you that Lisa has her beautiful wife, Rasheida, and one day you are going to meet her on this program. She's just a beautiful human being and woman. And I specifically wanted you all to be on here because I think that there's this misnomer about allowing people to live their life and what they consider to be an abundant life. So talk a little bit to the audience about how that all came to be for you, and what were some of the challenges where you had to move from fear into love, right?
Right. That's it. Moving from fear into love, and it's being okay. You know, it's a process. You know, we did a show. So a shameless plug here. Rasheida and I have a YouTube show, a YouTube channel called Lisa and Rasheida. So subscribe. You know, follow us on Instagram and all those great things. There's several social media platforms to connect with us.
And we'll
But
put that in the chat as well.
okay. And so we you know, we did a show on levels of coming out. There are levels of coming out even for straight people. It is that recognition that you are all of these different kinds of people. I am a mother. I happen to be African American, but I also happen to be Native American. I happen to be a Christian. I happen to be a professional. I'm somebody's daughter. I'm somebody's sister. I'm somebody's mother, somebody's spouse. And so, again, you know, it is finding that alignment between those things. That's the abundance in it. How do I live my full authentic self and all of those boxes together, and I'm just not stuck in one, right? And so Rasheida and I were dating. You know, we both went through our own processes of coming out in terms of sexuality and orientation to our families and that kind of thing. And then I found this wonderful person to call my partner. And then we were wrestling with the question, well, do we have the right to take this further? I mean, she had been exposed to marriages, and we actually went to a church. I'll give them a quick plug, Lake Avenue Baptist Church, which is in Rochester, New York, where we had couples who had been married 50, 60 years that we had the opportunity to sit at the table with and talk about the fruitfulness of a marriage and some of the trouble, pain spots of the marriage. And we kept looking at each other saying, we want this, and why are we afraid to go get it? So we just decided that we were no longer going to ask permission.
Yeah.
We ended up having a crazy large wedding, and more than 200 people showed up. And the funny thing is, I'm a minister as well. A lot of friends in clergy, we had people tell us, well, we're not going to come because our pastor thinks this or this person thinks that. And they all showed up. And most of the people at our wedding were 50% were clergy. So it's an interesting dynamic there. That's a whole nother topic we could get into. But what we decided, Gladys, is that, you know, both being Christians, raised in the church, we decided that we were no longer going to ask man's permission, but talk to God about his promises of yes and amen. And we thought, well, if we were promised this abundant life, but we are hiding that, then what are we saying? Because we're living in an apologetic state. or phase of our lives. I
And
am
that is not
walking
living
around.
an abundant life when you're always
Correct.
in this apology mode of operation.
Right.
You won't ever live to your fullest potential.
Correct. And I'm not being authentic about who she is to me and vice versa. So we just decided, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. Yeah. And I'll tell you, our parents were not on board with this initially, not at all, because we didn't blame them. They were raised in a traditional Christian fashion. We got it. We
Right.
spoke to them. But what we did was we sent out invitations, over 400 invitations to everybody that we love. We didn't ask them, did they love us? We know they loved us. That's why they were part of our lives. But we said, hey, listen, this is how we're going to approach it. We invite you to spend the day with us as we commit to each other. This got nothing to do with you. You're
Right.
just invited to be there to witness if you want. If you decide not, we understand that there are some things that are keeping you. That's your fear, but it's
And
not
we
ours.
love you anyway, right?
Right. And we're not asking your permission. The bigger thing of that was we were saying we don't want to exclude you by thinking you don't want to be there or making up your mind. You've got a whole 3-4 months to decide what that future is going to look like. Now, if
Yeah.
you come, great. If you don't, what you won't do in 20 years, which is interesting now because the Pope has come out and said he's okay with this, all of this, right? 20, and we've been married 20 years. So
Right.
we didn't want you to look in 20 years and say, well, listen, Rasheida excluded us. No, you made that decision.
Right.
We opened it knowing that you would have an issue, perhaps, but it's up to you to take responsibility and accountability for where you want to be in our lives. It's up to us to take control of our lives.
Yeah. So, working that abundant life in the middle of whatever circumstances you find yourself surrounded in. It doesn't say you only live an abundant life when everything is going great, everybody's in agreement with you, all of
Right,
that. So you still
right,
have to move through your abundant life through whatever challenges that are in
correct.
front of you. And the other thing that I love about Lisa and Rasheida is how they were caregivers of Lisa's grandmother. Oh my God, Granny. Oh my goodness, Lord, the stories and the things that she would say. I keep telling Lisa she needs to write a book about Miss Granny and just the love that she gave and the unconditional love and the willingness of the sacrifices, and just talk a little bit about that because she was doing that with a professional career. She uprooted and relocated herself to be there to support her grandmother. She's no longer with us, but I think she still is with us in spirit.
Oh,
That's just
yeah,
my
for sure.
opinion. Her spirit was just too strong to not be, around her. Can I talk about how, because I think people, especially in today's environments, are living complicated lives. Like I said, it's a holistic approach to their lives. It's
Right,
not just one silo. I can do one thing at a time. You're doing your life is it's
right,
integrated, it's
exactly.
complicated. So talk about that because there are people who are caregivers while they are still working, while they're going through this pandemic, economic crisis, and maybe even more so. How do they care for that, and how can they find that abundance in the midst of the responsibility and the accountability that we have every day?
So, you keep mentioning my fantastic other half. And I'll be the first to tell you, I would not have been able to do it without her. Rasheida
Yeah.
owned a successful mobile spa business prior to us moving back to Indiana in New York. And so it meant a career change for me. It meant shutting down her business because it wasn't the virtual world. You can't do hair virtually, but she had taken the hair business from the stand-up brick and mortar building, and she was bringing those services to people's homes. They would have a bunch of folks over, and they would do wine and cheese and all that kind of stuff, and she would do services for them in terms of hair and nails, etc. So that took a lot because we had to sit down as a family, of kids too. We sat down as a family for them. I had worked at a higher educational institution, Rochester Institute of Technology, for 23 years. Their tuition was tied to that. It was guaranteed. So, it was a big family decision to move and be there to support not just my grandmother, but all my grandparents were living in the Midwest, as well as my mom. And my mom initially, and my aunt, who were primarily my caregivers, or who had primarily raised me, were both sick at the time. So we moved there with the intent of helping care for my mom. And then once my mom passed away, unfortunately, that left us with the full-time caretaking of my grandmother and my other grandparents. So here's the blessing. Let me stop and pin it right here. The blessing for me is I grew up with my great-grandparents, their siblings, my grandparents, and I'm 55 years old this year, and not a lot of people can say they knew their great-grandparents, let alone till they were 30-something.
That's right. That's
So
right.
I appreciate the wisdom and the blessings and the things that were passed on to me through that. But it also meant that I needed to be careful and be sure that I took care, understood the treasure in that, right? So when it came to my grandmother's care, there was absolutely no question about what we were going to do. And Rashida's relationship with my family is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a cousin, Kia. She teases me all the time. She says, if you ever decide that you guys are going separate ways, we're keeping Rasheida. I don't know what you call
You might be out, but not Rasheida, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that comes because my cousins also watched how my wife, she took care of my grandmother, my grandparents actually, the way that as if they were responsible for her lineage. I mean, she just loved on them and they loved on her. So we had to make a decision that I left higher education and went into corporate consulting because I could, this is no secret. Leave higher education, go into consulting, you can double up on your money real fast, right? And so I needed to lend my expertise to a different arena so that I could support the family. But that was I by no means would say she took a homemaker. That homemaker thing, that's played out. Rasheida, the times where I would come home off a project so that Rasheida could get some R&R for herself, I was going crazy trying to balance all of the kids, my mom, my grandmother. I was like, how do you do this? I'd much rather work in corporate America than do this full time.
And that's saying something when you can make that statement, right?
I mean, it's a lot to juggle. So, it was a sacrifice in that we gave up living in New York and our lifestyle as we knew it. It was a blessing in that the years we got, the wisdom to sit at the foot of my grandmother's bed like I was a child again, and the stories. And, my grandmother was a character, man. I mean, the stuff she would say, and I am compiling a book based on it's called Conversations with Granny. I am compiling a book on some of the conversations we had, some of the stuff she said we couldn't publish. I mean,
she really, really, really was a sweetheart, Lisa. Yeah. So, when we talk about building and living that abundant life, what are some tips that you can give the audience? Because I think it's just so important that you understand that abundant life doesn't mean that everything around you is perfect.
That's correct.
So give some tips about how they can actually build it and live it and succeed at it.
So here's the thing, that in the industry, in the corporate industry, we have something we call fail fast. And we have these things, if you're an engineer, you've heard of agile versus waterfall. Really, the agility, it's about agility and failing fast, meaning you go through life, you just take steps, you just live life, you just live life. It is a journey, and there is no right and wrong. The Bible says that all things work for the good of those who love the Lord. So there is no exception to that rule. And when you walk through life understanding that everything you experience at that time, whether it's
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
That's correct. Whether it feels good to the flesh or not, serves for the purpose in which you were created. And that's the big thing. What is my purpose? When you find that purpose and you start to walk in that direction. And so I know the question is going to be, well, how do I do that? So let me give you this tip. If you can, to the viewers, if you will sit by yourself, with yourself for a moment, and you did not have to punch a clock or rely on a salary, and let's just say it's just you and God, and you could be doing anything you wanted, whatever that is, that's it. That's what God made you to be doing, because our purpose is not tied to finance. Our purpose is
Right.
not tied. The Bible says your gifts will make room for you. So when you start to walk in that thing that God created you for, which really comes naturally, it's just the fear. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know what it feels like. So it's that fear that holds us captive. I'm going to go back to another Bible verse. Fear is not of God. You know, we've got all these songs that come out, we sing them, but we don't believe them. And so when you start to walk towards the reason that you were created, it makes it, doors will open, situations will change, things will modify, because the book says your gifts. Doesn't say anything about our education, doesn't say anything about our money. It says our gifts will make room for us. And when you sit back and you talk with God, the other clue, if you're afraid to sit with God by yourself, the other thing is sit back and ask yourself, what are the 10, not the next 10, 20 people, what is the most common thing that people ask you to do?
Yeah.
If they always come to you and say, hey, can you bake me a cake? There's probably a good chance that baking is your thing. I mean, sometimes it's not a big you're not building a skyscraper, you're not building a Sears Tower. Sometimes it's a small thing, but it is still that thing that God created you for. And nobody else can do it your way. It doesn't even matter if somebody's doing something similar.
Right.
Your suit.
Your span on that. And the thing that I hear the most when I'm talking to my gifts and talents, because what people will tell me is, well, I can tell you they start telling me what they can't do, what they're not good at doing, what they
Right.
don't like doing. I said, but that's not the question.
Right.
The question is,
Right.
what are you good at? What are your gifts? What are your talents? What are the skills that you have built,
You
that
know,
you
and
enjoy, that you enjoy?
I think though sometimes we're overthinking. And
Yeah.
so we assume that what we can do is just something we do. We don't understand the value in what we do. And that's why I said that one of the tips would be ask, what do people ask you for? Because you're thinking, I just bake a cake. No, they're thinking you bake the best cakes in America, and that's why they keep asking you. So now you add a little price tag onto that, and you keep modifying that process and getting better. That's the agility piece, right? You keep getting better. So today they've been asking you for caramel cakes, but let's say you throw a little chocolate in it. Now you got 2 or 3 cakes, and then you throw a little strawberry in and you got 4 cakes. You might be on your way to a baking career, and that might have been what God created you for. You're going to know it. If it's easy, if things just change easily, when you start down that path, you're going to know that's the right thing.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard for us to sit with ourselves and figure that out because we only go down a little bit of a layer.
Absolutely. It's scary.
But when you talk to someone, not anybody, we need to stop talking so much to people who don't know any more than we do. So I have always had a coach. I have one today that brings me down cuts me down some layers in my life to really get me into thinking differently about because otherwise I would just take it to here. When really you want to get down here to really get the full benefit and value of what it is that you want to do and the enlightenment, that is, behind that. Are there any other tips that you'd like to share, Lisa?
Again, you mentioned one, coaching. I have several coaches. I have, again, because we look at people segmented. There are people who are better at certain things than others. I can tell you this: don't take advice from somebody who has not walked that thing out. Don't take advice. The old thing: don't take advice from unmarried folks. When you're married, they don't live that life. You can't do that. Your girl ain't got to be home at midnight, but it's disrespectful to your man for you to be coming in at midnight.
Right.
Staying out all night. So don't take that advice unless you want to be single. Single people give single folk advice. Married people tell you it's hard. Rasheida and I, on our show, we have this little slogan: marriage is not for punks. I mean, there's just going to be some days where it's hard, so you have to walk it out. So the other tip is don't take advice from people you haven't seen the evidence. the fruit of the tree, right? If there's no evidence that this is an orange tree, if you're going to pick a lemon off that tree, you be careful. So you need to look at, and that's not to say that people are bad people or anything. You just have to decide what kind of fruit you want to absorb, you want to eat. And if you don't want lemons, then you got to go to an orange tree. If you don't want orange, you go to a pear tree. But if a lemon is growing an orange or a pear, get away from that tree. So like she said, you don't take your advice from everybody. But coaching is another thing that I do. I have several coaches. And all of them have a different strength, and they all pull different things out of me. But again, because we're segmented people, we have to address each piece of who we are. And I'll tell you something, Gladys, that's what allowed me to marry Rasheida. That was the thing. We also did an episode on this. How did I know? She was the person, I've dated a lot of people, but she was the person that told me it was okay to be all of these different people at any given time. Yeah. She understood the complexity of who I was. And she was like, I'm fine with it. I mean, if that's what you want to do, cool, I got you. And so I go, well, wow, she's really comfortable with me being all of these different people or having all these different aspects, because we can only focus on one thing at a time at moments in our lives, right? And she was okay with that. And then knowing that those pieces made up the total me. And so I knew she was the one. But, you have to sit with yourself. You have to, you have to be okay with self. You have to understand, and you have to embrace the idea that there is no right or wrong. This is a journey. It's like you're getting in your car. You're going to drive to a specific destination. You put a roadmap together, but sometimes you get there and there's a small detour. That doesn't mean you fail to get to your destination. It means you take a little detour to the right, a little bit to the left, or turn off, but you get back on your path.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And when you're talking to other people, because we always talk to our friends and family members and all of that, and I think that there's just too much of people telling you what to do.
Oh, absolutely.
And telling you what to do does not get you to your purpose. It gets you to their purpose.
Right.
Because so they're only telling you what to do based on what they would do. Because they may have fears, as Lisa talked about, that fear that would inhibit them from starting their own business. That fear of them coming out to say, I'm a lesbian, or in the LGBTQ community, that fear keeps them out. So they'll tell you, don't do that, right? They will tell you, don't go into this path, this job path, don't do this, don't do that. When really that's what they would do. And so therefore, if you're doing and living your life today based on what other people have said you should be doing, based on what you see other people doing, and you haven't figured out what should I really be doing, what is the outcome I want in my life, then you are doing yourself, and I will tell you, the world, a disservice, because there are people who need you, that abundant you, that authentic you. So you're shortchanging not just yourself, but also other people as well. So any final thoughts, Lisa?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The last tip is stop giving your power to people who have no more a supernatural ability than you do. So, it goes back to the example of Rasheida and I asking permission to get married. And, we hear this in the gay community. We hear this with people that say, you got no heaven and hell to put me in. Well, that's true. They don't. So stop taking advice from them as if they are the end all be all. Go seek your higher being. Go talk to your partners. Go talk to people who love you. And here's the thing. Even though people who love you may not embrace what you're doing right away, if they really love you, they're still going to love you when you do what you do, because that love is not negotiable.
And if they don't, then there are other people who love you who do. It's not the end of the world, because sometimes they won't. And if they won't, that's okay. You love them anyway.
Right.
That's what you do. And just remember that nobody should know you better than you know yourself. So we get this advice from coaches, from family members, from friends, but you still have to, in your core, know who you are.
Absolutely.
To take that guidance
Absolutely.
and direction and say, how does this really fit with what I say that I want, the outcomes that I want for my life? How do I define an abundant life? Because we say these general terms, well, I want to be happy. Well, what does happiness mean to you? Well,
Right.
I
What
want
does
an
it look like?
abundant life. Well, what does an
What does
abundant
that
life
mean?
mean to you
Right.
specifically? So that you know how to set that accelerated, sustainable plan to go about getting that. So just some fascinating nuggets. Girl, I could talk to you all day long, honey, about
We do, right? A
20
10-minute
different
phone
topics.
call for us turns into 45 minutes every time.
Exactly, exactly. So, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, those who are on. We've got Kia, Rasheida that's on, and some others that are viewing, and those of you who's come to me live, those of you who come on demand, because we do have the technology to do that as well. I appreciate your continued support. Lisa, my girl, Lisa. I love you. I love how you have embraced me, how you took me in when I was coming up there to the Midwest, and how much at home. And the other thing about Lisa is she can cook, y'all. She gets down in the kitchen. So I'm gonna leave it at that. So you talk about not silo. She's an integrated, holistic, complicated, loving human being
And,
who God
I
has
say
made.
it took a while to get there. But once you're there, Gladys, it is the most freeing thing in the world. And that's what I want folks to know. When you just do it and just be, you just do, you do all of the things that make you feel good. You pick from the right tree. It's an amazing journey,
Yeah,
and nothing ever is failure then. It's all
right.
just part of the journey to becoming a better you, a happier you.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And so to do that, you cannot attach yourself to the outcome of what someone else thinks about what you're doing.
Correct.
Let me say it again.
Correct.
You cannot attach yourself to the outcome of what someone else believes you should be doing. Release yourself from that outcome. All you
Right.
can do is do it, position it, how other people receive it. That is not your responsibility. That's their responsibility. It's not yours. Yours is to live and do what God has brought you on this earth to do.
To
And
do.
I believe He brought us to live life abundantly. And
Absolutely.
but we have to figure out, what does that mean? What does abundance mean? Because it means something different to me. It means something different, to Lisa and to all of you, each of you all there. So quit trying to make other people's abundant life
Happen.
and their views fit yours. We're fitting a round hole and what do they call it? A square peg and a
Put a
round
peg in a
hole.
round hole. You got it. That's
It
exactly
never
it.
worked. It will never work. So just be and live your life. I love the topic. It's especially in this environment of this economic and health and political crisis that we find ourselves in. I am telling you, I say all the time, even if you find the smallest little hint, the size of a mustard seed, that's going to help you to begin that, because she said it's a journey,
Yes.
a journey. You don't have to take big leaps all the time. Maybe
Nope.
you're ready to take that big leap, but you can take something the tiniest size of a mustard seed and nurture that and nurture it and nurture it, then grow it and grow it and grow it. So again, thank you, girl. I keep on talking, girl. Let me.
Yeah, I was going, here we go. When you said that it's a journey, this mustard seed journey. So here's the other thing. When we're in it, it seems like it's so big, it's so scary. You ever, I want, here's a thing for you guys. Think about something that scared the bejeebus out of you. At some point in your life, you had to make a decision. Think about that, how terrified you were. Now look back at it now. There's an old song in the church that says, when I look back over my life and I think things over, you always find when you look back at the thing, why was I freaking out about that?
Right.
And that's what happens. We keep falling prey to that same fear every time. And then when you get on the other side of it, you look back. So the thing is, you already have experienced it. Learn from those lessons. Every time I look back, it's smaller than what I thought it was. Every time I look back,
Exactly.
smaller than what I thought it was. That means the next thing that's coming up is not as big as you think it is. You're going to have a
Exactly.
point when you look back, and it's not as scary as you thought it was. And it's okay, because even if you come up on what you consider failure, that means be agile. Mothers are great at this. You, every morning, if you have more than one child in your house, when you get up, you got a routine. You're trying to get them up, get them dressed for school, get them breakfast, get them out the door. If one of those children wake up and have the sniffles, that changes the whole routine, right? But you didn't fail.
Right. Right. Right.
You just adjust it. And that's what we do when we're going on this journey in life, and we do these things. We go, that didn't work out quite the way I thought it would, but it's the same behavior. I just make a small adjustment here and there. And if you don't like it, whether it's good, it may taste good, but that still may not be your intent. You just adjust again. And guess what? You can adjust. You don't have to ask people's permission to adjust. It's your life.
It's your life, your life. And, just a question that Faye had is, what about being our brother's keeper? Do you have any comments about, not having that selfish perspective? Because I think you need to be selfish, but you also have to be your brother's keeper. Can you share any comments on that?
So interestingly, my grandmother, the granny we were talking about, had a philosophy on life. And my grandmother was a bit of a theologian herself. The Bible says, what shall be loosed in heaven shall also be loosed on earth, right? So what you do, what we serve, the way we love on each other is important. And so she used to tell us, you want to know if you're doing the right things in life. If it's not serving somebody to be a better somebody, you wasting your time, because that's God's intent. He created each of us to serve one another in some capacity. And so when you ask yourself, am I my brother's keeper? Well, is the action I'm getting ready to take going to make life better for somebody or worse for somebody? If it's making it worse, or if it's not going to help the quality of their life, then you have missed your point. And so she would always say, we'd ask her simple stuff. Why didn't you go to movies with us? Why don't you go my grandmother didn't go to movies. She didn't go to carnivals. She didn't believe. She said, listen, that ain't serving the Lord. In heaven, they praise God all day and all night. Where is he getting some praise and you giving folks your money for a movie? Tell me where that serves somebody. What did that make somebody's life better? It didn't.
Yeah. And I just believe that, God kept it simple. And this is not a religious show or anything like that, but I believe in a higher power, whatever you call that. I know that God keeps it simple. He said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you're doing that, then you are your brother's keeper. If you do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and you do that and you live that, then you are your brother's keeper. I think too often we speak words of religion, but we don't live it.
And Gladys, I think that's part of the challenge there. I think God, again, we did a little segment on this, on reconciling faith and religion and sexuality. So again, go to our YouTube channel. But we talked about on there how, we're so self-centered and egotistical that maybe, like you just said, God said, love one another. He didn't say love them according to your definition. He didn't say love them according to your neighbor's definition. His commandment was to love one another. So in essence, he's saying, regardless of what you think about it, I told you to get over your little ego and your attitude and embrace people. I'm waiting.
As human beings.
Right. A lot of times we're missing our own blessing and we're blocking our own blessings because we are waiting for man to agree. God is saying, no, I'm waiting for you to be obedient to what I told you to do. Love them anyway. Clothe them anyway. Feed them anyway. And the moment you do that, I will loose the blessings you're supposed to have on you. But you can't get out of your own way. You're too egotistical. You're thinking about what you're going to get out of it. And if you just serve your brother and sister and you love them the way I told you, then you've got a lot more coming. It's like a parent who rewards us for doing great in school.
Yeah.
or doing our chores on time. We're missing the ticket. We're not doing our chores. We're not taking care of each other. So you don't get no reward for that.
Yeah, and you all, we just need that so much in this world today. I'm just saying, we just really do. With everything that is going on, I'm just going to tell you, it's about love. It's not about fear. There's a lot of fear stuff going on out there. And so you can't live in fear because when you do, you're like this. And I'm telling you, nothing can get in. But
Right.
when we release it, as Lisa and I talked about, that sense of liberation and freedom that you feel because you are being authentically who you were meant to be, then
Exactly.
you will attract things. You will then be focused. You will be doing, not just throwing spaghetti against the wall. You will, so it's really important that if you find your, because feel in your body, if you feel in your body, your chest is tight, your stomach is knotted, headaches, or if you're like this, you find yourself tense all the time, I'm asking you to notice and be aware that you are in that
Right.
mindset and be
Release
aware
it.
of it, release it, set an
Yeah.
intention to take action, to notice anytime you're here, to do this. When you get back in it, what can you do to switch your mindset
Right.
towards love?
Right.
Right. If you switch it towards love and hate can't occupy the same space at the same time.
Sure can't. Sure
So
can't.
if you're in that fear mode, in that hate mode, switch it to love. General, not based on your ego, as Lisa talked about, but just from a human being's perspective.
Right.
Loving your neighbor as you love yourself, etc. Okay, Lisa, we're gonna keep on talking if we get.
I know, right? I will ask for one
I
more
love it. Go ahead.
one more shameless plug. I do have my also coaching website. I can.com. And that's about affirming who you are, because as we've said, ultimately, who you are and what you were created for, you have to focus on it. You can say it like this. You can say that the universe will give you what you focus on. So if that's negative, you get negative. If it's positive, you get positive. You could say that thou will keep you in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. Same thing. Just pick the words you want to use to fill it in. But I am is that you get to determine who you're going to be in the world. You get to determine what kind of fruit you want to pick. You get to determine what kind of pie you want to bake. I have means that God has already given you everything that you need to fulfill the purpose for which he created you. And I can is simply, I can do all things through Christ Jesus who created me anyway. So,
Yes, yes. And I like to add that last one, I did. Because that says you took some action and you
there you
actually
go.
made that happen. I did, y'all. Y'all.
So,
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to say thank you, Lisa, for joining one more time.
I know,
I
right?
said it
Real
about
go.
six
So
times,
they're
right?
just getting a real glimpse into our lives, right?
Exactly. Thank you, everybody, again for joining live. Those of you who will listen afterwards, if you get some nuggets based on this sip and talk, please share it. If you do hashtag replay, make comments. If we see comments towards, within this feed, we will ensure to respond to that. I will ensure that Lisa's information is in the chat so that you can reach out to her. She's someone that I know. She knows strategy, strategic thinker, and we don't think strategically about our lives.
Right.
We think
Absolutely.
strategically about other businesses, the businesses we work for.
Right.
That's strategic, but not, we need to be strategic about our lives as well. And before we start another
I
conversation,
was getting ready to say we're going to go some whales. Let's get off of here.
we're going to part with you. But again, thank you all for joining. Know that I love you. And thank you for coming to another Tuesday morning Sip and Talk. And I will just say as a program note, next Tuesday is election day. So I will not have a Sip and Talk because I want everybody focused on going out there and voting. And
I'm with you.
if you voted already, you need to be taking people in there to vote. You need to be calling people to get out there and vote. So that's the day where is the last stretch. We are focused on that. And then the following Tuesday, starting in November, I will be doing the sip and talks at noon versus at 10 a.m. Because talk about those silos. I'm that learning coach for my grandbabies, and that's their break. And then that's the time that I can really be focused on, taking care of y'all during that time and taking care of my grandbabies. Life balance, living life abundantly,
That's
being
right.
able to
That's right.
bring all the things in that I want. So my grandbabies are very important to me. My business is important to me. Y'all are important to me. So I like to bring all of that in. So thank you again for joining. Love y'all. Thank you again, Lisa.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye bye, y'all.